All characters and events described in this story are fictitious. Any similarities with real people or situations are purely coincidental. Please do not judge strictly. Every author was once a beginner. Write in the comments what city you are from and where you listen to this audio version. Don't forget to like, share your life experiences, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next exciting story. Lucas Jennings woke up to the piercing morning sun hitting him straight in the face. My head was pounding, my mouth was dry, and my whole body felt a dull, aching pain. He was not lying in bed, but on the cold, hard ground. Lucas opened his bloodshot eyes and found himself lying on the lawn in front of his own house. Everything around was quiet. The sleeping suburb had not yet awakened. In the distance, against the background of a pinkish sky, loomed the peaks of the Rocky Mountains, which habitually protected Colorado Springs. A sharp gust of wind brought the smell of wet grass and morning freshness, making him feel nauseous. "Dad, how are you?" He heard his daughter's trembling voice above him. Lucas focused his eyes with an effort. Standing over him was Sophie, her 15-year-old daughter, with disheveled brown hair and worry in her eyes. She was wearing a sports sweatshirt and sneakers, apparently getting ready for a morning jog. But instead, she was now bending over her father, who was lying drunk on the porch. Lucas tried to rise up, resting his elbow on the ground. The whole body protested. There was a pounding in my temples as if a woodpecker was sitting there. He realized that he must have had too much to drink during the night again. Fragments of last night came to mind. A bar on the outskirts of the city, cheap bourbon, some loud argument with a stranger. Then failure. "Damn," Lucas croaked, wincing at his own voice. Sophie stood nearby, holding a bottle of water. She sat down and handed it to her father. "Drink," she said quietly. In her voice one could hear both concern and fatigue beyond her years. Lucas frantically grabbed the bottle, unscrewed the cap with trembling hands, and took a few sips. Warm water irrigated his parched throat. He coughed, but then was able to sit up more confidently. Now he looked at his daughter better. Dark circles under her eyes were visible on her pale face. She must have slept poorly. Or maybe she cried. He felt unbearably ashamed. A picture from the outside appeared before my eyes. A 40-year-old man, a war veteran, lying drunk in front of his own house, and his teenage daughter in the rising sun trying to bring him to his senses. Somewhere in my soul, a painful lump of realization swelled. He had sunk to the very bottom. Sophie hesitantly put her hand on his shoulder. "Come on, I'll help you get up." Lucas nodded, afraid to meet her gaze. He felt worse than any hangover. More precisely, the hangover tormented the body, but the soul was tormented by something more terrible: guilt and shame. Leaning on his daughter's shoulder, he somehow got up. His legs buckled, the world swam before his eyes, but Sophie firmly supported his side, surprisingly strong for a thin girl. She groaned quietly under her father's weight, but did not complain. They moved towards the front door. The house seemed somehow alien, even though Lucas had lived in it for many years. An ordinary two-story house made of light brick in the suburbs of Colorado Springs, with a small front garden fenced with a white picket fence. Once upon a time, this house was a full cup. Children laughing in the yard, evenings by the fireplace with the whole family. And now the mistress of the house barely speaks to him, and the children are forced to see their father in this state. A figure appeared on the porch. Ellie, Luca's wife. There was a mixture of anger and disappointment in her eyes. She crossed her arms over her chest, watching her husband stagger across the threshold with the help of her daughter. "Again," Ellie said quietly but clearly, shaking her head. There was so much weariness and hopelessness in that one word that Lucas almost stopped, as if he had been slapped in the face. He didn't dare raise his eyes. Sophie helped lead him inside and sat him down on the nearest chair in the hallway. Ellie watched silently, pressing her shoulder to the doorframe. Lucas felt her icy gaze on his back. The son, 12-year-old Ethan, looked out of the living room, attracted by the noise. His big brown eyes reflected fear and embarrassment when he saw his father. Lucas covered his face with his hands. I wanted to fall through the ground in shame. He imagined how he looked to them, now smelling of alcohol, dirty, with a swollen face. Ethan, go to the kitchen and have breakfast, Ellie said quietly to her son, not taking her eyes off Lucas. Sophie, you too. But Mom, Sophie began, still standing next to her father, as if she was afraid to leave him alone. I myself, Ellie interrupted. Go. The children reluctantly obeyed. Sophie gave her father a short, pitying look, then turned it to her mother, trying to read her mood. Ellie just nodded to her daughter, letting her know that everything was fine. When Ethan and Sophie disappeared into the kitchen, a tense silence hung in the hallway, broken only by the ticking of the old wall clock and Luca's heavy breathing. He was still sitting, bent over, resting his elbows on his knees and covering his face with his hands. My heart was pounding with shame and fear. It would begin now, he knew. This silent thunderstorm overhead will certainly burst out with the wife's angry words. And honestly, he deserved every single one of them. Ellie sighed. Instead of screaming, her voice sounded dangerously calm. How long will this last, Lucas? He didn't answer, just lowered his hands and rubbed his swollen face with his palms. His throat was dry again, and he took another sip of water from the bottle Sophie had given him. The liquid hardly helped, there was still a lump in my throat. He began hoarsely, not knowing what to say. The apology would sound hollow now. He had said it 100 times already. Promises to improve even more so. Ellie came out of the shadows and stepped closer. In the morning light, her blonde hair shone cold gold, but her eyes remained dark and tired. How many years did she shed because of him? Lucas didn't dare imagine. You promised, she said quietly, and every word was like a knife. The last time was really the last time, remember? You swore you wouldn't touch it again. Lucas's mouth became more dry. Did he remember? Certainly. He remembered yesterday morning, when, having sobered up after a previous binge, he looked into the eyes of his wife and children and thanked fate that they were still with him. Then he swore that he was quitting. This lasted exactly until the next breakdown, barely a week past. Lucas closed his eyes. A tear slowly rolled down his cheek. He didn't want to cry in front of her, but he couldn't help it, there was too much going on. Self-loathing was overwhelming. I'm sorry, he whispered, barely audible. Ellie smiled bitterly. Sorry? She mimicked joylessly. I've heard this so many times already. What's the point? He said nothing. What could he say? Nothing. His wife sat down heavily on the second chair opposite him. For a few moments, she simply looked at her husband. Once upon a time, these eyes looked at him with love and admiration. Now the pain is frozen in them, and something else, pity, or already indifference. You know, Ellie said quietly, I didn't sleep all night. I was waiting for the police to call, or from the hospital. I thought maybe you crashed somewhere, or you got into a fight with someone and you were arrested. Lucas raised his head. He couldn't bear to hear this, but Ellie continued in a calm, almost detached voice. I think so every time when you don't come to spend the night. I'm going through the options in my head. Are you in the morgue? In intensive care? Or is he still alive, just got drunk somewhere on the street? Today, she smiled bitterly, he was found at the doorstep of the house. Lucas stood up, staggering. It hurt him to hear every word. He wanted to stop her, hug her, and beg for forgiveness. But he knew that he wouldn't dare touch her now. Instead, he said, I can't do this anymore. I can't help myself, Ellie. She looked at him carefully, glaring. Then do something, she said simply, because she waved her hand towards the kitchen where the children were. We definitely can't do this anymore. Everything broke inside Lucas. He realized that he was on the verge of losing his family completely. Or maybe he has already lost it, since his wife speaks in such a tone. For several seconds, he stood with his head down. Then he asked quietly, Will you take the children to school? Yes, in half an hour, she answered coldly. You better take a shower. You smell, she winced, like a winery. Having been pricked by her contemptuous tone, Lucas swayed, but stayed on his feet. She's right, he really is a pathetic sight now. And yet, a desperate decision was already brewing within him. Ellie's words, "do something," rang the alarm bell. I, "I'll try," he said quietly. Ellie didn't ask what he meant. She just nodded dismissively. "Let's see." She stood up, making it clear that the conversation was over, and headed towards the kitchen to the children. Before disappearing around the corner, she said over her shoulder, "And get yourself in order." Lucas was left alone in the hallway. The silence was heavy on the ears. Only the muffled voices of children and the clink of dishes could be heard in the kitchen. Sophie was probably making toast with her brother or eating cereal. A normal morning for a normal family, but their family has long ceased to be normal, thanks to him. He slowly walked up the stairs, holding on to the railing. Each step was difficult. My legs trembled. One thought was pounding in my head: I can't go on like this. With disgust, he tried to remember how yesterday it all started again. Some little thing served as an excuse to drink, and then it started. Maybe someone in the store reminded him of. No, he pushed away the painful memory. Not now. When Lucas reached the bathroom, he turned on the cold water and stuck his head under the faucet. The icy stream sobered me up a little. He looked at his reflection in the mirror above the sink. A swollen face with stubble, reddened eyes, a split lip apparently. That same fight in the bar had happened after all. Looks pitiful. He didn't recognize himself. Do something. These words resurfaced in my mind. Lucas understood. One more binge like this, and that would be the end. Ellie will leave, take the children, and he will lose them. Yes, he has already lost the respect of his daughter and son, the trust of his wife. There is nowhere to fall further. He's at the bottom. Gritting his teeth until it hurt, Lucas made a decision. Real, solid, not like those vague promises to yourself in the morning that dissolved in the evening. No, he can't do it alone. He's already tried and failed. So we need help. A word popped into his head that he had previously dismissed: rehabilitation. A friend once recommended a center for veterans who suffer from PTSD and alcohol addiction. Lucas then only laughed it off. Now the idea has acquired frighteningly real appeal. He turned off the water and ran his hand over his face, shaking off the drops. The front door slammed downstairs. Ellie and the children must have left the house. She must have never even said goodbye to him, or perhaps she just decided not to bother him. Doesn't matter. Lucas, shaking from a hangover and nervous tension, wiped his face with a towel and headed towards the bedroom. There, opening the closet, he took out an old, battered backpack. You can't hesitate. If he changes his mind again now, it will all be in vain. With quick, jerky movements, he began throwing things into the backpack. A couple of t-shirts, sweatpants, socks, underwear. There was a noise in his head, but he held on to the thought that he was going to get treatment. Otherwise, he will die physically or finally as a person. Throwing a framed photograph on top of his things, a photo of the whole family from a year ago, where he and Ellie were still smiling, hugging each other, and the children were fooling around in front of the Christmas tree Lucas zipped up. He took the photo as a reminder of what all this was for. As he walked downstairs with his backpack slung over his shoulder, he left a note on the kitchen table for Ellie and the kids. His hand trembled as he wrote the letters: I went to a rehabilitation center. I love you. Forgive me. I'll come back different. Lucas. Putting down his pen, he stood for a couple of seconds, gathering his courage. My heart was pounding, but for the first time in a long time, there was a strange clarity in my soul. He was afraid of the unknown, what awaited him in the center, whether it would help. But he was more afraid of losing his family completely, and also myself. Before leaving, he paused for a moment at the sideboard in the living room. There was another framed photograph. Two young guys in military uniform, hugging each other, smiling against the backdrop of a tent somewhere in the desert. Him and Josh, an old friend of his from before. Before that surgery, Lucas took the frame in his hands, his fingers sliding over Josh's face in the photo. A lump came to my throat. Sorry, buddy, Lucas mentally addressed his dead friend. He knew that what was happening to him now was not least due to the fact that he could not survive his death. He put the photo in his backpack too as a reminder of his duty to live while he lived. A minute later, Lucas Jennings left the house, carefully closing the door with a key. Remembering that he had left the car at the bar, he decided to call a taxi. The phone was with him. While dialing the number of a taxi service, he once again glanced at the house, cute, well-groomed, with beige curtains on the windows. The house that he almost completely destroyed with his addiction. I'll come back changed, he thought firmly, clearly imagining his daughter's frightened face above him in the morning. I have to. The taxi arrived 10 minutes later. Getting into the car, Lucas told the driver the address, a rehabilitation center for veterans on the outskirts of Colorado Springs, which he had once heard of. As the car moved smoothly, he gripped the seat belt tightly. Somewhere inside, a tiny germ of hope, or at least determination, sprouted. He knew that the path ahead was long and difficult, but there was no other way out. The concrete walls of the rehabilitation center seemed foreign and unwelcoming to Lucas when he crossed the threshold. In the morning, he was lying on the damp ground near his own house, and now he found himself here in a place where those who have lost themselves in alcohol or prohibited substances gather. He felt a mixture of fear and relief. Fear because he didn't know what awaited him, and relief because he had finally done at least something right. The reception area smelled of disinfectant and a faint aroma of coffee. A middle-aged woman in a blue cardigan sat behind the counter. She smiled welcomingly at the newcomer. Welcome. How can I help? Lucas shifted awkwardly from foot to foot, clutching the strap of his backpack. My name is Lucas Jennings. I called this morning. About the rehabilitation program, he said hoarsely. The woman nodded, looking at the list on the table. Yes, Mr. Jennings. We've been waiting for you. Please fill out this form. She handed him a folder with papers and a pen. Lucas sat down on a hard plastic chair against the wall and began to write out letters, filling out the form. Name, age 40, diagnosis alcohol addiction, length of service 18 years in the Army, reason for application. He hesitated over this point. What to write? I've reached rock bottom. I'm losing my family. Guilt won't let me live. As a result, he said dryly, I wish to get rid of addiction and post-traumatic syndrome. My hand was trembling slightly. The hangover had not yet completely gone away. He stopped several times, closing his eyes as the letters began to float. It was quiet in the reception room. Only the clock was ticking and muffled voices were heard somewhere around the corner. Having finished with the papers, he returned to the counter. The woman, her badge read Carol, scanned the completed form. Okay, she said softly. A room has been assigned to you. The doctor will examine you soon. Are you new to our center? Lucas nodded. Yes, for the first time in such places. Don't worry, Carol smiled knowingly. It's cozy here. There are many veterans here like you. You are among your own. Among our own. Lucas chuckled bitterly to himself. Yes, our own broken by the war and their own demons. But out loud, he only smiled forcedly. At this time, a short, strong man in uniform khaki trousers and a polo with the emblem of the center came out of the corridor. He extended his hand. Hello, I'm Greg, senior consultant. You must be Lucas. Lucas shook his hand, noting the hard, calloused palm. Probably a veteran too. Yes, Lucas Jennings. Nice to meet you. Mutually. Come on, I'll take you to your wing and show you where everything is. Greg took the folder with Lucas's documents from Carol and nodded to him, saying, Follow me. Lucas slung his backpack over his shoulder and followed the consultant through the double doors deeper into the center. The corridor was bright, the walls were painted a calm green color. Posters hung on the walls here and there with inspirational slogans like One Day at a Time and photographs of Colorado mountain landscapes. Somewhere in the distance, water gurgled, perhaps a fountain on the patio. How did you get there? Greg asked, holding the elevator door open. Fine, Lucas answered briefly. He didn't really want to talk right now. Greg, however, seemed to understand his condition. The first days are the most difficult, but don't worry, we have a good team. If you need anything from medicine to just talking, please contact us. A veteran yourself. He nodded at the line of the questionnaire. Yes, the Army, Lucas confirmed. I guess, Greg chuckled. We have many of our own guys here who have gone through this. For example, I am a retired Marine. They exited the elevator on the second floor. Greg led the way down the corridor. Here is your department. Rooms for two. For now, we will move you in alone. There is no neighbor, but he may appear later. There is a recreation room here, TV, table football, coffee machine. He waved his hand towards an open room with sofas, where several people were sitting, animatedly talking. And here we have a dining room, downstairs according to the schedule, then come down to eat. Well, the chambers. Yours is number 14, right here. He stopped in front of the door, on which was attached a piece of paper with the numbers 14, A and 14B, apparently 2 beds. Greg opened the door with his key and let Lucas inside. Small room, 2 identical beds, bedside tables, wardrobe. There is a table with 2 chairs by the window. Everything is modest, but clean. The window looked out onto the courtyard, where one could see a lawn and several people doing morning exercises. Get comfortable, Greg said. In half an hour, the doctor will come in to check your condition, maybe give you something for your symptoms. You're already shaking, right? Lucas couldn't deny it. His hands were trembling slightly. A chill was running through his body, even though it was summer outside. The forehead is damp. Yes, a little, he admitted. Don't worry. The detox will take place under supervision. If anything happens, we have medicines that will make it easier. The main thing is that you are already here. This is a bold step. Lucas smiled wryly. I don't feel like a daredevil, but... He hesitated, searching for a word. A man who decided to fight, Greg finished for him firmly. This is worthy of respect. Many don't get to this point. These simple words suddenly made Lucas' eyes sting. He quickly looked away, pretending to look at the bed. Thank you, he managed. Greg patted him on the shoulder. Rest. Take things apart. If you feel nauseous or feel very dizzy, press the call button, okay? Fine. Left alone, Lucas sat down on the edge of the bed. The mattress is springy, the sheets smell of washing powder. He slowly looked around the room. On the next bed, clean linen is neatly folded. Perhaps they are waiting for another patient. Soft daylight fell from the window. Someone left a forgotten magazine on the nightstand, Sports Illustrated, apparently the previous occupant. Everything around seemed so normal, ordinary, and at the same time unreal for Lucas, as if he was watching from the outside. He took a photo of his family out of his backpack and placed it on his nightstand. Then he took out a photo with Josh, the same one from the Army. After thinking a little, I put it back in my backpack. It's not time to put the ghosts of the past on the cabinet. Let them stay inside. Throwing his backpack into the closet, Lucas lay down on the bed, looking at the ceiling. The body ached, especially the shoulder. The old wound was making itself felt from stress. There was a pounding in my temples again, and nausea set in. He closed his eyes, trying to breathe evenly. My thoughts were running wild. Here he is. So what next? Will it work, or will he go straight out of here? The hunger for alcohol still stung inside, even though the morning horror had sobered me up, but my body was already demanding its way. Lucas clenched his fists. No. He will endure. Must. He remembered Sophie's face this morning, those frightened eyes, and Ellie's face, full of disappointment. I introduced little Ethan, who probably stopped understanding what was happening to Dad. The pain of these thoughts made me want to howl, but instead Lucas said in a whisper, I won't let you down. Not again. He was not a religious man, but now he involuntarily turned his gaze to the white hospital ceiling, as if hoping that God could hear him, if God still pays attention to him at all. Gradually, in the silence of the room, Lucas' sluggish body began to fall asleep. He almost dozed off when suddenly a quiet knock was heard. The door opened slightly, and a man in a white coat with a phonendoscope around his neck entered, obviously a doctor. Mr. Jennings, he asked quietly, sorry for interrupting your rest. I'm Dr. Phillips, our internist. Shall we do an inspection? Lucas stood up. Yes, sure. The inspection was quick and routine. The doctor, an elderly man with kind, tired eyes behind glasses, measured my blood pressure. It turned out to be elevated, as expected, and checked my pulse and reflexes. I asked several questions. How much did I drink? When was my last dose? Did I have any chronic illnesses or injuries? Lucas answered honestly. He had been drinking heavily for the last couple of years. Last night he got drunk heavily, chronically an old wound in his shoulder from minor injuries. He mentioned insomnia and nightmares. The doctor just chuckled knowingly. Many people here have this. We can mitigate alcohol withdrawal syndrome with medications, concluded Dr. Phillips, making notes on the chart. I'll prescribe a vitamin drip and a sedative for the night so you can get some sleep. And probably an anticonvulsant, just in case. Did you experience seizures or hallucinations during withdrawal? Lucas shook his head. No, not yet. I'm just sweating, shaking, and can't sleep. Well, let's hope it won't. But we'll watch. For the first day or two, we have patients under supervision. So if you feel worse, tell the staff immediately. Lucas nodded. He felt humble, like a patient in a hospital not used to it, but forced to trust the doctors. When the doctor left, promising to send a nurse with enrollment 4, Lucas lay down again. A clear realization crept into his head. Now his life belongs to this place for a while. The daily routine, medications, therapy, everything will not be determined by him. On the one hand, it was frightening with its uncertainty. On the other hand, yes, let someone else lead. He clearly couldn't handle it himself. A nurse came and put him on enrollment 4. As the clear liquid slowly flowed into his veins, Lucas closed his eyes. The thought flashed. What's it like at home? Ellie must have read the note. What did she think? Are you happy? Or did she just shrug her shoulders tiredly? Does she still have hope for him? Most likely, not anymore, whispered an inner bitter voice. After everything that happened, it's unlikely. But perhaps, for the sake of the children, she still. No, don't guess. First, you need to get on your own feet. Suddenly, he felt a sharp attack of homesickness for his family. Even an hour ago, he was afraid to return there. The soul is strange. Only after losing it do you begin to appreciate it. He hasn't completely lost it yet. There's still a chance. Is there? It may be weak, but it is there. Conflicting emotions completely exhausted Lucas. The sedative in his Roman 4 made his eyelids feel heavy. The nurse checked the Roman 4 and, making sure the patient was okay, quietly left. Lucas fell into a heavy, dreamless sleep, sleeping sober for the first time in a long time in the care of strangers, but perhaps safe from himself. The night brought with it not only rest, but also something that Lucas secretly feared. At first, he slept soundly under the influence of the drugs, but in the morning, when their influence weakened, his mind released the old ghosts. He is there again in the hot desert. Yellow sand underfoot, heavy body armor pressing on my shoulders, a machine gun in my hands. Blinding sun at its zenith. She and Josh sneak along the clay wall, weapons clutched. Somewhere ahead, a shadow flashed an enemy. My heart is pounding in my ears, adrenaline is rushing into my blood. Attention, the sector is clear, Josh whispers, looking around the corner of the dilapidated house. Lucas nods, wiping the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. It's quiet around, only the wind blows away the dust. Their squad split up, and now the two of them are combing this nook of the Afghan village. Keep your eyes open, Lucas replies, trying to keep his voice calm. Even though everything inside shrank, it was too quiet. Josh turns to him and grins like, relax, brother. Josh has always had nerves of steel. He lowers his weapon for a second and says, when we get back, the first glass of beer will be with me. Just first. Josh, he shouts, not hearing his own voice in the ringing that filled his ears. Smoke billows in front of him. Lucas jumps up, staggering. There is now a crater in the place where his friend had just stood. Sun rushes forward into the center of the explosion, throwing away fragments of brick. Josh, he shouts again, his throat hurting from the sand and screams. And now he sees. Lucas grabs the radio, calling the doctors. Wounded. The soldier is wounded. Urgently. The voice is hoarse, but it seems they can hear it. He kneels next to Josh, trying to inspect his injuries. Damn it, Josh, hold on. Lucas gives a strangled growl as he takes a personal tourniquet out of the first aid kit. Josh blinks, tries to say something. Lucas leans closer, feeling the salty sweat on his face. Lucas. Josh breathes out, barely audible. His eyes wander, pupils dilated. I'm here, brother. Lucas squeezes his hand, trying to keep his friend conscious. Don't you dare close my eyes, do you hear? Medics are on the way. Josh tries to smile, but comes out with a painful grimace. He whispers something barely audible. Lucas can't believe his ears. What are you talking about? Calm down, be silent, save your strength. But Josh stubbornly clenches his fingers on his hand, collecting the last of his breath. Stop it, you'll get through it. Lucas shouted desperately, as if he could hold his friend's life with his voice. Where are these damn doctors? But it was too late. No, 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 Lucas howled, grabbing his friend by the shoulders and shaking him as if he could bring him back. Josh, wake up, damn it, don't you dare die. The answer is silence. Only the wind howled through the ruins, and the screams of other soldiers could be heard in the distance. The world was collapsing. Lucas leaned over his best friend's body, his own forehead touching Josh's blood-splattered forehead. He screamed, not hearing himself, feeling his heart breaking somewhere deep inside. No, in reality, this scream escaped Lucas Jennings' chest, and he woke up, sitting up on the bed with a jerk. His chest was heaving, his throat was raw. There was darkness all around, only the pale rectangle of the window indicated dawn. There is cold sweat on my forehead, my t-shirt is sticky. The door of the room suddenly opened, and the orderly on duty appeared on the threshold. What's happened? You screamed? Lucas looked around in a daze, trying to catch his breath and figure out where he was. The desert disappeared. The smell of blood was replaced by the smell of disinfection. He's safe. But Josh, that dream again. How many times had he already seen it? And it was always the same. Powerlessness and loss. Sorry, nightmare, Lucas croaked, barely recognizing his own voice. The orderly nodded understandingly. It's clear. Maybe bring some water or sleeping pills. It's still early. You have time to sleep. No, I'm fine, Lucas lied. He could no longer sleep. A painful heart was pounding in my chest, and there was a lump in my throat. The orderly wished peace and left, closing the door. Lucas stood up and walked around the room to stop shaking. For a moment, he wanted to fall to his knees and burst into tears, but he clenched his teeth. So many years have passed, but the pain has not subsided one iota. Fucking PTSD, as the doctors called it. But in fact guilt, which he never dealt with. There was nothing to do. There was still at least an hour until breakfast. Lucas decided to take a shower, hoping to wash away the sticky sweat and anxiety. The water gushed out in hot streams, burning his skin, but he stood, leaning his hands on the tiled wall, and gritting his teeth, tried not to cry. He replayed that scene so many times, looking for what could have been done differently. Maybe we should stop Josh, stop him from stepping on that mine. Maybe check it yourself. But this was his sector. No answer. And there is no peace. After the shower, he felt a little more alive on the outside, but inside everything was burning. Patients gradually gathered in the dining room for breakfast. Lucas took the tray and chose oatmeal and toast. He didn't have much of an appetite, but he had to eat. He sat down at a free table. A man of about 50, with gray temples and a veteran's badge around his neck, limped past. He nodded to Lucas for a moment. "Sound sleep, buddy?" he asked quietly, but without mockery. Lucas tensed. "Did you wake me up?" "It's okay. It was time for me to get up anyway." The veteran sighed and sat down next to his tray. "I'm Ben, by the way." "Lucas," he introduced himself. They ate in silence for several minutes. Lucas felt Ben looking sideways at him, as if he was assessing whether he should speak or not. Finally, Ben spoke. "My nightmares don't let me live either. Every damn night." Lucas looked up at his table mate. Ben's gaze was straight, tired, but there was a glimmer of understanding in it. For some reason, Lucas felt that he could answer him honestly. I have the same dream, about a friend, which I lost. Ben nodded slowly. Sorry. I lost my brother in Iraq. I often dream about something similar. And do you know why we wake up screaming? He looked Lucas straight in the eyes. Because we still blame ourselves for it. Lucas felt a lump in his throat. He only managed to ask hoarsely, how to stop? Ben smiled bitterly. If I had known. He stood up, picking up his empty tray. Group therapy today at 10. I think we all need this. Lucas nodded slightly. Ben patted him on the shoulder. Hold on, brother. After breakfast, Lucas walked around the center for a bit. The morning was cool. The sun was just rising over the distant peaks of the Rocky Mountains. The air smelled of pine trees. He took a deep breath, trying to clear his lungs and head. The group lesson took place in a large room on the first floor. The chairs are arranged in a semicircle. About 10 participants, mostly men of different ages, a couple of women. All of them were either veterans or simply traumatized addicts. Lucas didn't know for sure. They were busy talking in low voices. Someone was drinking coffee from a cardboard cup. Lucas sat down on an empty chair to the side. Almost immediately, the presenter came in, a woman in her mid-40s with a warm smile. She introduced herself. Good morning, I'm Meg, psychologist, and your host today. Everyone said hello. Lucas noted that the people around looked quite free, apparently, not for the first time. He felt a little awkward himself. He met Ben's gaze. He was also there and nodded encouragingly to him, saying that everything was fine. After a short introduction about the topic of the day, the topic was guilt and self-forgiveness. The participants took turns sharing their experiences. Lucas listened with bated breath. It seemed as if this topic had been chosen especially for him. Of course, this was not so. Everyone there has their own story. One young guy of about 25 told how his best friend died in an accident, but he, drunk and driving, survived. The guy cried, saying that he couldn't forgive himself for this and therefore drank even more. Now he's trying to figure it out. A middle-aged woman, hunched over, said that her husband died from going too far, and she blames herself for not keeping track. Ben also spoke in an even, quiet voice. He spoke about his brother, with whom he went to war together, but his brother did not return. Ben still believes that he should have been in his place. Each story resonated with pain in Lucas's soul. He saw how other people's guilt destroys people, how they reproach themselves, and he realized that he himself had been doing the same thing all these years. At one point, psychologist Meg looked at him. Lucas, is there something you want to share? Only if you are ready. He felt all eyes turn to him. My heart jumped to my throat. It's hard to talk about your innermost things in front of strangers. But so many people had already bared their souls. Lucas felt that he had to try. He cleared his throat, feeling his palms sweat. Yes, it's probably worth a try. His voice sounded hoarse and quiet at first. My name is Lucas. I am addicted to alcohol. I drink to numb the guilt. Many years ago, in the service, I lost my best friend. He died in my arms, and I survived. His throat tightened. Lucas fell silent for a moment, trying to cope with the surging feelings. Meg nodded at him encouragingly. Do you consider yourself to blame for his death? Lucas' lips trembled. It was especially painful to say this out loud. Yes, I am convinced that I should have died in his place, or together with him. Didn't save. You didn't kill him, did you? Meg asked softly. Lucas winced. Of course not. But I was in command then. I was in charge of the sector we stumbled upon. He was interrupted by another man from the group, thin, with a sharp gaze. Listen, buddy, do you know how many of us there are? We all think, if only and if only. There are no ideal solutions in battle. Chance rules there. Lucas shook his head. But I feel that it's my fault. He even told me at the end, don't blame yourself. And I can't stop. As he spoke, he suddenly realized that he was crying. Tears were streaming down his cheeks, but he didn't care who saw. For 10 years, he did not let this pain out except through a bottle, and now he is crying like a child in front of strangers. It was a strange feeling, ashamed and at the same time a little lighter, as if a heavy slab had been lifted from my soul. "You did everything you could," Meg said quietly, handing him a box of tissues. "Sometimes we are not omnipotent. War is cruel and chaotic." "I often wonder why I came back then," Lucas whispered, wiping his face. "He came back and ruined everything. I'm destroying my family, ruining myself. Maybe it would be better to stay there." Several people in the group shook their heads. Ben said firmly, "Don't say that. The fact that you are alive means that you must live, for myself and for him." "That's right," the woman said. "Your friend wouldn't want you to kill yourself with this guilt, since he even said not to blame himself." "But how?" Lucas began and faltered. "How to forgive yourself if your friend died?" Meg answered softly. "It's a process, Lucas. It won't happen right away, but you have already taken the first step, acknowledged this pain, and shared it. Now you will need to work with her. Perhaps you will find a way to honor your friend's memory, to do something good for him, and gradually acceptance will come." Lucas nodded silently. He wiped his eyes, trying to calm down. The group supported him. Some patted him on the back, others quietly said they were glad he shared. Inside there was devastation, but light. It was as if an abscess had been opened and pus was released. The pain has not gone away, but it has become a little easier to breathe. For the rest of the class, Lucas listened to others, but part of his thoughts were somewhere far away. He thought about the first time he had directly admitted out loud. He wanted to die instead of Josh, and all this time, in fact, he was slowly walking toward death, filling himself with alcohol. But he's still here, alive. At the end of the group, when everyone began to disperse, Ben approached Lucas. He held up well. "It's hard, I know." Lucas sighed. "Thank you, Ben." Ben smiled slightly. "You know, we need to live in such a way as to honor their memory and not disgrace them. I tell myself this every morning. Sometimes it helps." Lucas nodded. He remembered the photo of Josh, now in his backpack, and thought Ben was right. Josh definitely wouldn't have liked to see what his best friend had become. After lunch, Lucas had an individual conversation with a psychologist. The same Meg invited him to her office. They discussed his life after the army, his family, and how his addiction began in more detail. Lucas said that before that he had held on for several years, but then he gradually began to break down, first on holidays, then more often. It became especially difficult about a year ago. "Yes, last year marked 10 years since that day," Lucas confirmed quietly. "I went to the grave, and then somehow, I lost my temper." Meg nodded sympathetically, taking notes. She asked an unexpected question. "Tell me about your family. What's going on with your relationship now?" Lucas sighed heavily. "Everything is bad. My wife is on the verge of leaving me, I can feel it. My daughter, she's probably ashamed of me, but she's still holding on, trying to help. Son, he's still a child, he's just afraid." As he said this, he realized he hadn't called them even once. How long has he been here? Third day? Fourth? The memory was a little fuzzy due to the events, but that's about it. "Would you like to call them?" Meg asked softly, as if reading his thoughts. "We usually recommend contacting your loved ones after a few days if you are ready." Lucas nodded. "Yes, I left them a note. They know where I am. But it's important for me to hear them." The psychologist smiled. "This is a good sign. I think you might as well call home tonight if you feel confident." In the evening, when all the procedures and classes were over, Lucas, worried, picked up the phone in the administrative office of the center. I dialed my home number. He waited so long for the beeps that he thought no one would answer. But finally, my daughter's voice was heard. "Hello? Sophie." Lucas caught his breath from the tenderness and guilt that overwhelmed him at once. "Hello, sunshine. This is Dad." There was silence on the other end for a couple of seconds, then a muffled sob was heard. "Dad, how are you?" "I'm fine, Bunny," he whispered, feeling his eyes fill with tears again. I'm being treated. I will try my best. Sophie sniffled loudly. I'm so glad. We read your note. I thought you wouldn't call at all. Sorry. How are you? How's Ethan, Mom? He heard Sophie calling someone. Ethan, come here. Dad is calling. Footsteps were heard on the phone, then a thin, boyish voice. Dad, are you really being treated there? Lucas swallowed hard. Yes, son, it's true. And I will be there until the end, I promise. How's school? Ethan snorted. Dad, it's vacation now. But there was joy in his voice. Exactly, Lucas chuckled nervously. What are you doing then? I was repairing my bicycle yesterday. The wheel got punctured. Mom helped me seal it, Ethan said cheerfully. Lucas felt a pang he had to be the one to fix his son's bike. But it's okay, there will be more. Great. What were you doing, Sophie? He asked, returning to the conversation with his daughter. Yes, so, yesterday my friends and I went to watch a movie. Mom drove us, she replied, and she added quietly, Mom, she wants to talk. Lucas's heart began to beat faster. Right now, here's her voice. A cautious voice was heard on the phone. Lucas, Ellie. He almost groaned from the surging feelings. Thank you for hanging in there. She paused, then said formally, How do you feel? That's better. I took it seriously, really, Ellie. I won't let you down this time, Lucas blurted out hotly. In response, silence, only her breathing can be heard. After. Okay, you need this first. He closed his eyes, imagining her face. He's probably frowning, biting his lip, not trusting yet, and he has the right. I'll call, he said softly, and thank you for not leaving me until now. Ellie sighed. Lucas, that's not what we're talking about now. Let's focus on getting you healthy, and then we'll see. Her words sounded neutral, almost alien, but Lucas expected worse. At least she's talking. Yes, of course, he agreed. How are the children? Aren't they too mad at me? No, they are happy that you are being treated. They missed you. Ellie's voice trembled slightly on the last phrase. I know. I want them too. And you, he added, barely audible. There is silence on the other end. Then, please just get better, okay? Okay, Lucas whispered. I love you. He heard Ellie apparently hand the phone back to the children, her voice in a low voice, say goodbye and that's it. Sophie picked up the phone again. Dad, we love you too. Come back soon. Only sober, okay? Lucas smiled sadly. I promise, dear. A few more words and the call ended. Lucas held the phone to his ear for a long time after lights out, as if trying to retain the warmth of the family's voices. He realized, for their sake, he had to pull himself out. That night, he saw Josh again in his dreams. But this time, the dream was different. She and Josh simply sat in an armored car under the starry sky and were silent. Before waking up, Josh allegedly smiled at him and said, Live. Lucas woke up in the dark with wet eyes and whispered back to the empty room, I'll try, brother. Returning home a month later, Lucas felt like a different person, but the house greeted him with wary silence. Ellie and the children were waiting for him at the threshold formally, a little awkwardly. The children were the first to rush to hug. Sophie pressed tightly, as if she was afraid to let go. Ethan wrapped his arms around his father a little lower, burying his nose in his stomach. Lucas hugged both of them, feeling his chest ache with happiness and guilt at the same time. I missed you so much, Dad, Sophie muttered, not letting go of him. And me, honey, he kissed his daughter on the top of her head, then ruffled his son's hair. Missed you too, buddy. Ethan smiled, looking up at his father. You really don't drink at all now. True, Lucas answered seriously, and I won't do it again. Ellie stood a little further away, watching this scene with an unreadable expression. When Lucas released the children, their eyes met. He saw that it was not easy for his wife on the one hand. She was happy for the sake of the children on the other. Cold caution remained in her gaze. Ellie, he said quietly, not knowing what to add. She nodded briefly. Glad you're home. The words were correct, but there was almost no emotion in them. Lucas understood that trust could not be regained in a month of rehabilitation. This is just the first step. Walking inside, he felt the familiar smell of home, a mixture of baking, air freshener with lavender, and something else familiar, elusive. God, how he missed this place, he missed it sober. He wanted to breathe deeply new life here. I made dinner, Ellie said, heading to the kitchen. Nothing special, but I think you need some normal food. Lucas noticed a casserole and a fresh salad on the table. Ellie had rarely cooked with such care lately. Perhaps this dinner is a gesture of support, or maybe just a habit of hospitality. The children did most of the talking at dinner. Sophie was talking about how nervous she was about her presentation on a summer study project and how well it all went. Ethan shared how he learned little tricks on his skateboard. They were clearly trying to make up for everything their father missed during the month. Lucas smiled, encouraged, and asked questions. Ellie sat quietly, ate little, occasionally inserting a remark. She would praise Sophie or correct her son's story. There was an invisible wall of separation between Lucas and her. After dinner, the children ran to their rooms. Sophie promised to show her father a new music playlist later. Ellie was putting the plates in the dishwasher. Lucas decided to help. He collected the leftovers from the table and wrapped the salad in film. Thank you, it was delicious, he said quietly, standing next to his wife at the sink. I'm glad you liked it, she answered just as quietly, without looking at him. There was a tense silence. Lucas knew he needed to talk, but he didn't know how to start. The past hung over them. He muttered painfully, I am very grateful to you for supporting the children, for waiting. Ellie closed the dishwasher door tightly and turned to him. A faint smile flashed on her lips, but her eyes remained serious. Don't thank me. I did it for them. This was said without malice, rather tiredly. Lucas nodded. Understand. He wanted to say something else, that he appreciated her, that he remembered her pain, that everything would be different. But maybe words don't mean anything now. At night, he settled down in the guest room. Their marital bed in the bedroom had long been forbidden territory. Ellie didn't say anything when he took his sleeping clothes there. Maybe she even breathed a sigh of relief. Lucas lay on his back, looking up at the dimly lit ceiling of the guest room. Behind the wall was the children's bedroom. From there came the barely audible murmur of music in the headphones. Most likely, Sophie fell asleep listening to the player. The house was calm, only there was no peace in his soul. The joy of returning was mixed with anxiety. Will he be able to regain his wife's affection, or have you already lost it forever? A week has passed. Lucas strictly followed the recommendations. He attended an A group downtown every day, jogged around the block in the morning, and found a couple of small projects around the house. He kept himself occupied so as not to let his thoughts lead him astray. The children were happy to have a sober dad at home. Sophie chatted with him almost every evening about everything about her friends, about plans to go to the school theater section in the fall. One day, she timidly asked, Dad, could you go to the stadium with me? I ran in the morning, but I wanted to practice cross-country before school. I need someone to time me. Of course, Sophie. Tomorrow we'll go together. I'll be happy to help. And they went early Saturday morning to the school stadium. Sophie ran along the track, and her father stood with a stopwatch, encouraging her and noting her results. Then he treated her to lemonade at a roadside cafe. They were sitting at a table outside. The sun was already hot. Sophie talked about her friends, and Lucas listened, amazed at how mature and reasonable she had become. He felt as if he was getting to know the daughter he had missed while he was drinking. It was happiness mixed with the bitterness of lost time. Things were getting better with my son, too. At first, Ethan was embarrassed by his dad apparently. He didn't know how to behave with his now new father. But gradually, seeing that Dad was in a good mood and was not screaming or withdrawing into himself, the boy thawed out. Lucas played a few video games with him, and went for a bike ride in the park together. Ethan even bragged to his friends about introducing his father when they met by chance. This meant a lot to Lucas. His son was no longer ashamed of him. However, with Ellie everything was complicated. She behaved evenly and politely, but coldly. The outbursts of anger and screams disappeared, but so did the warmth. They communicated like housemates, in the presence of children more lively, without them dry and formal. Lucas felt that she seemed to be shielding herself from him, as if she was afraid to let him get close. One evening, while putting Ethan to bed, Lucas heard Ellie talking on the phone downstairs in the living room. It was about 10 p.m., and the children were almost asleep. His wife's voice sounded quiet, but there were intonations that Lucas had not heard for a long time, soft, even gentle. He involuntarily became wary. When he came down, he saw the light in the living room and the silhouette of Ellie sitting on the sofa with the phone to her ear. Seeing Lucas, she shuddered slightly and hastily ended the conversation. Yes, yes, see you tomorrow. Bye. Lucas stopped at the door. Everything is fine. Yes, she nodded, avoiding his gaze. A friend called at work. I see, he drawled, feeling that something was slipping away. What kind of work friend could make her look like that? Ellie's cheeks turned pink. Her eyes sparkled like those of a woman who had just spoken to someone important to her. He pushed those thoughts away for now, but the worm of doubt settled in. In the following days, Lucas began to notice things that he might not have noticed before in his drugged state. Ellie often sat on her phone, texting, and would nervously block the screen when he appeared. Sometimes in the evenings, she would linger at the store or at a friend's place. She returned a little more animated than usual, sometimes humming to herself. The children did not seem to attach any importance to this. They thought their father understood. Lucas felt like a blind man who was seeing again. One day, while tidying up the bedroom, he came across a drawer on Ellie's bedside table, where some papers lay. Not wanting to intrude on her privacy, Lucas accidentally saw the edge of an envelope with a law firm logo. He felt feverish. Lawyers? He stood holding the handle of the drawer, aware that perhaps these were divorce papers. My hands began to tremble. Lucas carefully closed the drawer. The fog in my head threatened to turn into a storm. He left the bedroom and sat on the stairs, trying to calm down. If she has already gone to the lawyers, does that mean the decision has been made? But why doesn't he say anything then? Out of pity, out of caution so as not to derail his sobriety. He ran his hand over his face. Is this really the end of their marriage? Maybe it can still be fixed. He's different now. That night, Lucas tossed and turned for a long time, overcoming a wild desire to drink. The ghost of old relief beckoned. Drink, you will feel better, you will forget. He even picked up the car keys in the hallway, intending to run to the convenience store for a bottle, but after taking a step he froze. No, not again. He forced himself to drop the keys, as if he had been burned, and walked into the kitchen, where he drank ice water. After that, he automatically opened the cabinet where the bottles were previously stored. It was empty, of course everything had been cleaned out. And thank God. Lucas closed his locker and clenched his fists. No, even if everything collapses, he will not return to the bottle. He made a promise to the children, to himself, to Josh. And no pain is an excuse to drink again. It's better to let him scream in the forest in despair than to lose his temper. To distract himself, Lucas took out the notebook they gave him at the center and began to write, as they were advised to do when you want to drink. Describe your feelings. The letters jumped, but he wrote out everything that was painful. Fear of losing his wife, shame for the past, resentment, bitterness, love for his family, everything in a row. The page was wet from the drops. He didn't even notice how he was crying. But it became a little easier to release emotions on paper. The next day, he decided to talk frankly with the children. Not about the divorce directly, nothing is clear about that yet, but about their mother. He wanted to understand what they knew. Perhaps children know more than they think. The occasion turned out to be in the evening when Ellie went to a meeting at work, as she said, leaving smartly dressed, although it was Friday. Lucas invited the children to watch a movie together, And then, in the comfort of the living room, he decided. Let's talk, he began cautiously, when after the film they were left sitting on the sofa in the semi-darkness. Sophie and Ethan turned to him. I want to ask you, are you happy that I'm back and holding on, honestly? Sophie nodded immediately. Yes, Dad. We are very happy. You don't notice it yourself, but things have become much better at home. She smiled slightly. Ethan leaned against his father. Yes, you don't scare us anymore. And it became more fun. Lucas put his arm around his son's shoulders and nodded to his daughter. Thank you. This is important for me to know. I'm trying for you. He hesitated, gathering his courage for the next question. How? Do you feel? Is Mom happy? What have I changed? Sophie and Ethan looked at each other. Sophie bit her lip. Mom, she's glad you're okay, of course. But, but, Lucas pushed gently. The daughter looked away. Dad, it was just very hard for Mom. And for a long time, she... Sophie paused, clearly not knowing how to speak. Lucas exhaled. Tell me straight. I can handle it. Ethan suddenly blurted out, looking at the TV screen. Mom has a friend. She talks to him often. We thought you knew. Lucas felt like everything inside was breaking. Even expecting this, hearing something like this from my son was a blow. He clenched his hand into a fist, trying to keep his face up. Friend. What kind of friend? Sophie threw an angry look at her brother, saying he shouldn't have been so straightforward. But then, seeing that everything was already clear anyway, she quietly said, Mom's work, colleague, or something like that. She corresponds with him often. We once saw them together in the city. She told us that we just met by chance. Ethan frowned. But they kissed then, Sophie. Sophie hissed. Quiet, but the words had already flown out. Lucas turned pale, kissed. So, there is no doubt. Ellie is having an affair. It was the children's turn to look scared. Sophie spoke quickly. Dad, I'm sorry, we thought you knew. You just drank all the time then, and she suffered a lot. Ethan mumbled. Dad, don't be angry with Mom. Lucas woke up from shock and saw that his son was literally shaking, thinking that his father might fly into anger. He hurriedly hugged both of them. Quiet, quiet. I'm not evil. Everything is fine. Of course, it wasn't good enough. A storm of pain, jealousy, and feelings of betrayal raged in my chest. But children shouldn't see this. Sophie began to sob, suddenly burying herself in his shoulder. Sorry, forgive us. We didn't want this to happen. Lucas stroked his daughter's back, trying to calm her down, but he himself felt as if the ground was disappearing from under his feet. He spoke without hearing himself. It's not your fault. You have nothing to do with it at all. And Mom, adults sometimes make mistakes. That's between her and me. Ethan asked quietly. Will you get divorced? Lucas froze. The directness of the question made my throat tighten. He looked at the frightened faces of his son and daughter. Both waited for an answer without blinking. I don't know, he answered honestly after a pause. I hope not. I will do everything to save my family. Sophie sobbed. But if Mom loves someone else, Lucas closed his eyes, trying not to show how much those words hurt him. I don't know, honey. I only know that I love you. No matter what happens, you are my children, and I will always be there, okay? Ethan nodded, wiping his tears with his sleeve. Sophie also tried to pull herself together. We will always be with you too, Dad. Just don't drink anymore, please. The three of them hugged each other on the sofa, each quietly crying about his own. Lucas felt like the world was falling apart. But from these embraces, he also drew strength. The children did not turn away, they were with him. For their sake, he will endure even this test. When Ellie returned later after midnight, she found the following picture. A floor lamp was burning in the living room, 3 people were sleeping on the sofa, hugging each other, a husband and children. Lucas and Sophie are reclining, Ethan is curled up. Ellie stopped on the threshold, putting her hand to her mouth. Tears welled up in my eyes. What has she done? She destroyed the family herself. My heart ached at the sight of this peaceful, touching, but so fragile happiness. She wanted to come over and cover them with a blanket, but at that moment Lucas opened his eyes. Seeing his wife, he carefully got out of the arms of the children, trying not to wake them. Sophie just mumbled quietly in her sleep, and Ethan rolled over. Lucas, trying to restrain himself, motioned for Ellie to go out into the hall so as not to speak in front of the children. They went into the kitchen. Ellie nervously rubbed her wrist, on which a thin new bracelet glittered, a gift from that very friend, Lucas guessed, although he had not seen it before. Both were silent for some time. Finally, Ellie began quietly. I have nothing to say, right? You understood everything yourself. I see it in your eyes. Lucas stood with his hands on the back of his chair so as not to show his trembling. He looked at his wife, his beloved, the same one with whom he went through joys and sorrows, and now he felt as if he had been stabbed. But I didn't want to scream. Instead of rage, there was fatigue and pain. How long has this been going on? He asked hoarsely. Ellie lowered her eyes. For several months. I didn't want to, but... She clenched her fingers. I thought you would abandon us altogether or destroy yourself. I was broken. And he just listened and supported. Do you love him now? Lucas squeezed out these words, afraid of the answer. Ellie's eyes filled with tears. I don't know myself. Perhaps. Maybe. She took a deep breath. Sorry. I didn't mean to hurt. That's why I was silent, waiting for you to recover at least a little. I was afraid that if I spoke directly you. Will I get drunk and die? Lucas smiled bitterly. Ellie covered her face with her hands. I'm sorry. He felt a sudden surge of pity for her. She suffered too. But immediately this pity was covered by a wave of her own grief. So you have already decided to leave me, she sobbed. I filed documents for divorce, but until I sent you the summons, I was delayed. I was afraid to finally finish it off. Lucas closed his eyes. Here it is, and, even knowing it, it still hurts to hear. For a while, the kitchen was filled only with her quiet crying and his heavy breathing. Finally, Lucas spoke, surprising himself that his voice sounded relatively even. You know, I won't beg you to stay, Ellie. You are an adult. You have made a choice. It's my fault. I understand everything. Ellie lowered her hands, looking at him with red eyes. You're not angry? I'm evil, he admitted dully. Angry at myself for bringing us to this. Angry at the situation. Probably for you too, a little. But it hurts more than anger. She stepped closer, carefully touching his hand. It hurts me too, Lucas. I don't think I can ever stop loving you. I broke down. He looked at her slender fingers on his hand. Once this touch gave him warmth and joy. Now it was burning. We should probably get a divorce if you love someone else, Lucas said quietly. Ellie sobbed harder, pressing her hand to her mouth so as not to wake the children. Lucas hesitantly, but still hugged her. She hid her face in his chest, sobbing. I'm sorry. Forgive me, she repeated through her tears. Lucas himself had tears flowing. He stroked his wife on the back, saying goodbye in his soul to these touches to her. SHH everything. Everything will be fine, he whispered, not believing it himself yet, but trying to reassure her. After a few minutes, Ellie pulled herself together and pulled away. What will we tell the children? She asked barely audibly, wiping her tears with a handkerchief. Lucas sighed heavily. Let's tell the truth, but carefully. That we decided to live separately, but we will raise them together. They will hate me, Ellie whispered, looking towards the living room. They won't, Lucas shook his head. They love us both. They will just need time. This made his heart ache, but he didn't show it. When? Ellie asked, meaning when to tell. Tomorrow we'll gather them and discuss them, he decided. Don't delay, they already guess. Ellie nodded, pressing the handkerchief to her lips. Fine. Lucas suddenly felt a strong urge to ask one last question. Is he a good person? The wife looked in surprise and blushed a little. His name is Mark. He's not bad. I'm not going to run to live with him right now, If that's what you mean. I need to get things straightened out here first. Lucas smiled sadly. We're already sorting it out. Ellie lowered her eyes. Lucas. He stopped. No need for explanations. Let's finish this today. I'll go get some sleep if I can. She nodded. Yes, sure. Before he left the kitchen, she said quietly, You have become so different. Sorry, it's too late. Lucas didn't answer. I just went to my room, feeling mentally and physically exhausted to the limit. But despite all this storm, he noted to himself, not for a second during this conversation did he feel like drinking. He experienced reality in all its acuteness without running away. The pain was sobering in its own way. Lucas lay down on the bed, closing his eyes. I remembered the dream where Josh said, live. How difficult it is to live when everything is falling apart. But he must. For the sake of the children, for the sake of yourself. Tomorrow would be a hard day, but he had to get through it sober. Otherwise, it's all in vain. So, with a heavy heart, but a firm resolve to hold on, Lucas greeted the dawn of a new day in his new life, a life in which he would learn and move forward no matter what. The next morning, Lucas and Ellie told the children about their decision. They did it in the kitchen without too many details, but honestly, Mom and Dad will no longer live together, but they both love Sophie and Ethan and will always be their parents. The children took the news hard, although they already suspected it. Sophie was crying quietly. Ethan sat pale, with his head down. It's my fault, he suddenly said dully. I said, No, honey. Ellie hugged her son, stroking his hair. You have nothing to do with it. You are wonderful. It just happened between adults. You won't leave us? Sophie asked, sobbing. Dad, you won't get lost, will you? Lucas moved forward impulsively and pulled both children into his arms. Of course not. You won't get rid of me, even if you want to. I will be with you as much as you want to spend time with me. Ellie nodded, wiping away her tears. We will agree on what is more convenient for you. If you want, you will go to Dad every weekend, or he will visit you. There will be no need to change the school. Everything will remain as it is. Dad will just live separately. Sophie looked first at her mother and then at her father. There was resentment in her gaze. But why? Since Dad stopped drinking. Are you still getting a divorce? Ellie bit her lip, not knowing what to answer. Lucas said softly, Sonny, it's been very hard for Mom all these years, and she. He exchanged a glance with his wife, and she has the right to her happiness. It's not because I'm bad now, it's just that too much has happened before. Sophie frowned. It's because of that uncle, right? She suddenly blurted out, looking straight at her mother. Ellie turned pale. Sophie. Lucas put his hand on his daughter's shoulder. Quiet, no need. It's redundant now. But Sophie boiled. No, we must. Mom traded us for some guy. That's how it works. Since Dad fixed everything, why can't we be a family? Ellie sobbed. Sophie, I haven't exchanged anyone for a man. I love you all. I just stopped loving Dad, the daughter snapped angrily. That's enough, Lucas said sternly, although Sophie's every caustic phrase sank his heart. Mom didn't stop loving you and Ethan, and our relationship with her is a complex matter. Both are to blame. Please don't blame her. Sophie blinked in surprise. But Dad, Lucas shook his head. I'm serious. I hurt my mother very much with my behavior, and her feelings are also understandable. You will understand when you grow up that everything in marriage is not easy. He hugged Sophie. He didn't want to justify his wife, and he was very offended and hurt that she didn't wait just a little bit, but he didn't intend to spoil her relationship with the children. She's their mother. Please, don't hold a grudge. We all need to stick together now, even though we won't be under the same roof. Sophie burst into tears on his shoulder. This is wrong. I hoped so. Ethan also cried quietly, burying his face in his mother's shoulder. Ellie looked at Lucas with gratitude through her tears. He defended her in front of her daughter, although he had the right to be angry himself. She will not forget this act. 2 weeks later, Lucas moved out of the house. He rented a small apartment nearby, one room, but bright. Money was running short. Fortunately, the owner agreed to rent it out with a minimal advance payment. Having learned that Lucas was a veteran and the Brotherhood played a role, he also served once. On moving day, Sophie and Ethan helped Dad put things into cardboard boxes. Ellie tried to stay away so as not to make things worse. By evening, all the necessary utensils, clothes, and personal belongings of Lucas were transported. The furnishings in the new apartment are meager: an old sofa bed, a wardrobe, a table, a couple of chairs, a small kitchen. But the children, having examined the new home, said that it's not so bad. "It's even cozy here," Sophie said, trying to cheer her father up as they laid out books on the shelf. "Yeah, the main thing is to install the computer and you can live," Ethan chuckled, arranging his favorite video games that he had brought to play at his dad's. Lucas smiled. "Thanks for helping, guys. Without you, it would take me a week to figure this out." "We'll also cook when we come," Ethan said. "I know how to scramble eggs, Dad." "Great, you'll make a chef," Lucas praised, ruffling his son's hair. He felt great support from his children. They even seemed to be trying to take care of him, as he did of them. This mutual care helped all three heal their wounds. Saying goodbye, Sophie hugged her father tightly. "Just don't be sad here alone, okay? And don't feel abandoned. We will come often." Lucas had a hard time holding back tears, rejoicing at his daughter's maturity. "I know, and I'm not alone. I have you, even if you're not nearby for a while." Ethan hugged him too. "I love you, Dad." "And I love you, son," Lucas whispered, squeezing the boy. When he and Ellie left, the apartment fell silent. Lucas exhaled, sitting down in his chair. Now he is truly alone, for the first time in many years. No comrades in the barracks, no family nearby, just him and the walls. He turned off the radio that was playing in the background, and the silence became even denser. It was moments like these that used to drive him to the bottle. But now it was different. Yes, the pain of loneliness was pressing, but at the same time Lucas felt a strange relief from the honesty of what was happening. He didn't try to hide or ignore anything. Everything is as it is. In order not to let himself get bogged down in sad thoughts, he decided to immediately arrange his life. "I put my clothes in their places, found an old coffee maker in the boxes, and placed it in the kitchen, and checked how the shower stall worked." Little things, but they were distracting. In the evening, he went to an meeting. The group received him with sympathy. Many already knew that he was going through a divorce. After the meeting, he was approached by Jim, his mentor who had been recommended to him in the local veterans community. Jim was about 50 years old, sober for 10 years, having once gone through the Vietnam War. He shook Lucas' hand firmly. "Are you holding on?" Lucas nodded. "Yes, it can be difficult, but I'm holding on." "Well done. Remember, one problem, one day. Don't solve your whole life at once, solve today's problems," Jim said instructively. This was one of the principles of the program, to live here and now. Lucas tried to follow him. "If you want to drink, call me at night," the mentor added sternly. "Thank you, I know," Lucas replied. So far, there have been no strong desires to drink. It even seemed to him as if the very fact that he had been able to go through such a storm sober had strengthened him. However, he did not delude himself. Addiction is a very insidious thing and can strike suddenly. The next morning, Lucas woke up to an empty apartment. It was early on a weekend morning, when the children were not with him. He stretched out on the sofa bed, feeling the unusual silence. Usually in the house, Ellie was rustling in the kitchen, or Sophie was turning on music, or Ethan was stomping. But here nothing. He sighed, gathering his courage. "We need to fill this new space with life," he thought. To start, go for a run. I went out into the yard. The morning turned out to be sunny and cool. The run was easy, even too easy probably to escape from heavy thoughts. Lucas ran longer than usual and returned lathered up, but a little calmer. At breakfast, he outlined plans. To buy groceries, the refrigerator was empty. He was used to Ellie always being in charge of this. To call the children in the evening. They had to go to their grandmother for the day and also get out his old things, sort through them. Lucas laid out boxes labeled Army and Memory on the floor. There were a lot of things there: a uniform, a beret, awards and medals, a field journal, a pile of photographs, letters. He carefully went through everything, plunging into memories. Here's a photo of a young him smiling next to an even younger Josh at a military base. And here is a letter from Rachel, Josh's sister, written a month after her brother's death. She thanked Lucas for bringing Josh's personal belongings home and for his kind words at the funeral. Below is a note: "I'll be glad if we stay in touch, Rachel." Lucas sank to the floor, holding the yellowed envelope with trembling hands. He never responded to that letter. Then, 10 years ago, he was going to, but couldn't. The grief was too strong. And then, when I tried to write, shame and guilt stopped me. What will I tell her? Why didn't you save her brother? And he chose to forget himself in alcohol. He remembered Rachel. He saw her a couple of times during Josh's life, when he and a friend visited family in Kansas while on furlough. Then Rachel was just a girl of about 20, with Josh's smile, only more shy. Then I met her at the funeral: tears, black dress, petrified face, and not a word more. He didn't keep in touch, even though he knew he should. "Promise," Lucas whispered, closing his eyes. The image of Josh dying again appeared in his mind's eye. He didn't fully understand then what Josh wanted him to promise. But years later, I realized, most likely, a friend asked to take care of his sister. They were orphans, except each other. Rachel had no loved ones left. "And I failed this assignment," Lucas said bitterly to himself. "But maybe it's not too late. You can try to fulfill your promise now, even if it's late." He took out his phone. Rachel's address and number were lost over the years, but he remembered that she had mentioned in the letter that she was moving to Colorado. She had an aunt or a job there. She may still be on staff. Lucas rummaged through the box of documents. He was sure to have jotted down Josh's family's contact information somewhere. "I found an old address book. Yes, here it is. Rachel Maddox, with some phone number and address in Denver. The number is most likely no longer relevant, but it's worth a try." With a sinking heart, he dialed the indicated number. Beeps. 1, 2, 3. Nobody answered. I was just about to hang up the phone when there was a click at the other end. "Hello?" A female voice rang out, a little tired and wary. Lucas grabbed the phone with his other hand. His heart jumped. "Hello, Rachel? Is this Rachel Maddox?" There is silence for a few seconds. Then, "Yes, it's me. Who's talking?" "This is Lucas. Lucas Jennings." He himself was surprised at how soft his name sounded after all these years. You might not know right away. I was Josh's friend." At the other end, a sharp breath. Then quietly, "Lucas. Of course. Of course I remember." The voice trembled. Lucas imagined how many memories were now flooding into her, as well as him. "Sorry for calling so suddenly," he began hesitantly. "I didn't dare for a long time. So many years have passed." Rachel paused, then answered a little warmer. "I'm glad you called. Is it true? I often wondered how you were doing." These words stung Lucas, she thought, but he didn't bother to contact her. He took a deep breath. "I would like to say a lot of things. Maybe it's better not over the phone. You're in Colorado, right?" "Yes, I live in Lakewood, near Denver," she said. Lakewood is a suburb of Denver, about an hour away. Quite achievable. "Great. That is," he realized, "it's great to be nearby. Maybe we could meet. If you don't mind, of course." Rachel didn't answer right away. There was surprise in her voice. "I don't mind. It's just very unexpected. But yes, I think we can see each other." Lucas felt both relief and a new round of anxiety. "Maybe I'll come this weekend. Will you have time?" "On Saturday, for example, around lunchtime," she suggested after a short pause. "I just have a day off." "Great. Will you send me the address?" "Yes, I'll send you an SMS." There was silence. Both did not know what to say after such a long break. Finally, Rachel added quietly, "Thanks for calling, Lucas." He closed his eyes, feeling a pang of guilt and hope at the same time. "I need to say thank you. See you later, Rachel. See you later, she said and hung up. Lucas lowered the phone, his heart pounding. He did it. He will speak to Josh's sister for the first time in 10 years. But what will he tell her? How to explain your silence? You will have to talk about your struggle, not hide it. Only honesty, he thought. As with the family, so with her. He spent the rest of the time until Saturday restlessly. I saw the children, took them to activities, trying to be as involved as possible as a father. In the evenings, I went over again what Rachel could tell me and imagined the meeting. Finally, the day of the trip arrived. Lucas started his old pickup truck. He took the car from Ellie, who bought herself a new one a long time ago, and drove out onto the highway to Denver. On the seat next to him is a box. He took all the memorabilia of Josh that he thought he would give to Rachel if she needed it. Among them, for example, is his brother's favorite token Lucas still didn't dare send it earlier. He carried it with him as a reminder. The journey took about an hour. Finding the right address, a small townhouse with peeling paint on the doors, Lucas parked and sat for a minute, gathering his courage. Anxiety rose in my chest. What if she's angry with him? Or is she not interested in him with her problems? He didn't even know how she lived. Maybe she has a family, children. I'll find out now, he decided and got out of the car, grabbing the box. Before he could get up to the porch, the door opened. Rachel stood in the doorway. She had changed. Now she was a woman in her 30s, with a tired face on which, however, the familiar features of Josh appeared, the same hazel eyes. Brown hair is pulled back into a hasty ponytail. There is a stain of paint on her hands, as if she was painting something. Dressed simply, jeans and an old t-shirt. They looked at each other for a moment, not knowing how to begin. Then Rachel stepped forward. Lucas. Lucas placed the box on the porch and opened his arms. Rachel awkwardly but hugged him tightly. He felt her trembling, and he himself could hardly restrain the surging feelings. So many years, she whispered. Forgive me, he said immediately, pulling away. Sorry for missing. I have no excuses. Rachel shook her head, wiping away her tears. The main thing is that you were found. Come in quickly. She let him inside. The house was modest, a cramped living room immediately leading into the kitchen. The furniture is old, but clean. There are children's toys in the corner. Cars are scattered. Do you have children? Lucas asked, pointing at the toys. Rachel nodded, smiling a little warmer. Yes, son. Tyler. He's 8. He's at a neighbor's now. Oh, I see. Lucas realized that he didn't even know if she was married. He didn't notice the ring on her hand. But I didn't dare ask directly yet. He sat down on the offered shabby sofa. Rachel sat next to him, looking at him confusedly. You haven't changed at all. Well, you've become a little more mature. Lucas grinned. In 10 years, everyone will change. You, too, have gotten better. She snorted. Flatterer. Black eyes are in fashion, right? Lucas didn't immediately understand that she was joking. Then he smiled. To me, you're still the same Josh sister I remember. Rachel lowered her eyes at her brother's name. They were silent for several seconds. How are you in general? She asked quietly. I heard that you were having problems. Once I tried to find out through friends, but Lucas felt ashamed. Yes, I had a difficult period. I just recently came out of this. Rachel touched his arm sympathetically. Sorry, I didn't mean to get in. No, I want to be honest. He shook his head. I couldn't cope after Josh's death. He drank for a very long time and ruined his life. But now I quit. I'm undergoing treatment, and I'm getting back to normal. Rachel smiled sadly. I'm sorry you went through so much. But I'm glad that everything is better now. Tell me about yourself, he asked. I don't know so much. Are you married? Rachel winced slightly, removing her hand. Was divorced 2 years ago. Sorry. Nothing. He turned out to be not the person he said he was. Rachel shrugged. I have a son left from him, and that's happiness. Lucas nodded, suddenly feeling more in common. He had just gotten divorced, although the story was different. Have you found a job you like? he asked. Rachel sighed. This is more difficult. I am a nurse by training, but I was sick a lot with my child and lost my job. Now I'm working where I can, looking for a permanent position. She was clearly embarrassed discussing her difficulties. Lucas realized that Rachel most likely lived a poor and difficult life. He said impulsively, I should have been there all this time. Rachel, Josh asked me to promise something before he died, and I think that concerns you. And I betrayed my promise. His voice broke. Rachel's eyes widened. Promise? She whispered. Was he talking about me? Lucas covered his face with his palm from the tears that rolled down. He didn't have time to finish. But I myself know how much he loved you. You only grew up with each other. He probably wanted me to look after you. But I didn't do it. Rachel shook her head, blinking away tears. Lucas, you didn't have to. You have your own life. I wasn't little. No, I have to, he said unexpectedly sharply. I promised a dying friend, and instead he drank to forget. I'm sorry, Rachel. She was silent, amazed by the strength of his emotions. Then she said quietly, You, too, were wounded by that war. Josh, he probably wouldn't blame you, and I don't blame them, honestly. Lucas shook his head. You are too kind. There was a pause. Rachel suddenly asked softly, Are you happy now? Well, except I'm talking about your family. Lucas smiled sadly. How to say, I also recently got divorced. Oh, she covered her mouth with her hand. I have 2 children, Sophie, she is 16, and Ethan, 12. They are wonderful. I was most afraid of losing them, so I came to my senses. Now I am establishing relationships with them. So I stopped drinking for them, she guessed with a smile. For their sake, and for Josh too, he added. I often thought, he gave his life, and I'm putting it in a bottle. This is blasphemy. Rachel squeezed his hands suddenly tightly. You got out, and that's the main thing. He would be proud. Lucas looked into her eyes, the same as his brother's. Tears welled up, but this time they were light. He nodded. I'll try to make him proud. They talked about the past, sharing memories of Josh. They either laughed, remembering the funny incidents of his pranks, or were quietly sad when it came to his unfulfilled dreams. Lucas showed the box he had brought. Rachel was moved as she sorted through her brother's things, which she thought had long been lost. She especially squeezed Josh's army badge in her palm. I picked it up, Lucas said quietly. I carried it with me for a long time. I couldn't let go. I'm sorry. She smiled softly. No, everything is correct. Perhaps he helped you survive these years. Lucas answered quietly. Maybe, but now he must be with you. Rachel hung the tag around her neck like a medallion. Her eyes moistened again. Thank you. Time flew quickly with conversations. In the evening, Tyler returned a curious fair-haired boy. At first, he was embarrassed by his uncle, but when he learned that he was a soldier with Uncle Josh, he was delighted. Lucas patiently answered the child's questions and showed several safe military souvenirs from the box, an old compass, which Tyler was happy about. Seeing how Lucas got along with his son, Rachel completely relaxed. At one point, when Tyler ran off to watch cartoons, she quietly said to Lucas, You're amazing, you know. After everything you've been through, you still have so much goodness. He was confused. I don't know about amazing things. I'm just trying to live right now. Rachel looked at him warmly. And you succeed. Lucas felt his insides warm for some reason. He caught himself thinking that it had been a long time since he had spoken like this at home with a woman who would look at him without condemnation or pity. Rachel's gaze was full of gratitude and something else, trust. The moment has come to say goodbye. Lucas, hugging Rachel goodbye again, felt a huge sense of relief. It seemed that he had actually begun to fulfill his promise. I would like to see you again, he admitted, approaching the car. If you don't mind. Rachel nodded with a smile. I will be only glad. And Tyler, too. He has already asked when, Uncle Lucas. We'll come again to show him his tricks." Lucas smiled. "Then I'll call you one of these days and we'll come to an agreement." Their gazes met for a moment longer than friendly. A strange excitement stirred in Lucas's soul. He looked away first, so as not to embarrass her, and climbed into the cab of the pickup truck. "See you soon, Rachel." "See you soon, Lucas," she answered quietly and waved as he drove out of the yard. On the way home, Lucas thought about how life took strange turns. He was going to fulfill a duty to a friend, and in the end, he found someone who seemed to understand him like no one else. Rachel was part of the past, but perhaps she could be part of the future. "Don't rush," he warned himself. "She's just happy to talk." Of course, he didn't dare think about anything more now, and the rest time will tell. In the following weeks, Luca's life became filled with new colors. He regularly met with Rachel and Tyler, either visiting them in Lakewood or bringing them to his home in Colorado Springs. In one of the old parks of the city, they once had a picnic with his children, introducing the two parts of their lives for the first time. Sophie was wary at first, as if protecting her father. It was strange for her to see another woman next to him instead of her mother. But seeing how warmly and naturally Lucas and Rachel communicated, the daughter softened. Moreover, Rachel immediately found a common language with her. She praised Sophie's drawings. Lucas proudly showed her sketches, knowing that her daughter was interested in design, and asked about the school without intruding, but with sincere interest. Ethan quickly became friends with Tyler. The 4-year age difference did not bother them. The boys kicked the ball around the lawn, climbed trees, and laughed. At some point, Ethan ran up to his father, out of breath. "Dad, can I give Tyler my old construction set? I don't need it anymore, but he wants it." Lucas touched his son on the shoulder. "Of course you can. I think Tyler will be happy." Rachel smiled, looking at the guys. "You have wonderful children, Lucas." "Thank you," he replied quietly. "Yours is wonderful too, so inquisitive." They sat next to each other on a blanket, watching Sophie teach Tyler how to throw a boomerang. The sun shone softly through the treetops, and a light breeze played with the strands of Rachel's hair. Lucas gathered his courage. "I'm glad they get along so well. I was afraid it would be awkward." Rachel turned her face to him. "Me too. But everything seems to be fine. Your children are open and kind. Well done for being able to keep in touch with them." Lucas grinned. "Not without difficulty, and not without their forgiveness. Sophie was very angry with me once." He briefly told how his daughter had been harboring resentment for a long time because of his drunkenness, and how she was now gradually getting closer to him. Rachel listened with interest. "She cares so much about you," Rachel said. "You can see how she rushed to protect you at first, as if she was afraid that you would be offended." Lucas looked warmly at Sophie in the distance. "Yes, she is my fighter. I even have to convince her that everything is okay." Rachel said quietly. "So she sees that I'm not an enemy." Lucas turned to her. My heart beat a little faster. "You're definitely not an enemy. You're something completely opposite. Friend." He stopped short, embarrassed, not daring to call what had begun to sprout between them something more. But Rachel understood. She lowered her eyes, a slight blush touched her cheeks. "Sorry, maybe it's too early to talk about this." Lucas began. Rachel looked at him kindly. "Everything is fine. I'm just a little unusual. Happy, but scared." "Scary?" he asked softly. She nodded. I've already lost loved ones. Brother then, husband, although he was not a gift, but still. There is only one left, and now, when life brings me again to someone dear, I'm scared to believe that this will last for a long time." Lucas felt a hot rush of tenderness and pain for her. Without thinking, he took her hand in his. "Understand? I'm scared too. I, too, have lost a lot and am afraid of losing more." Rachel squeezed his fingers tighter. "But maybe we can cope with our fears together." Lucas smiled and gently pulled Rachel towards him. She didn't resist, leaning against his shoulder, so they sat, watching the children playing, feeling each other's warmth. No words were needed. Later, While walking Rachel and Tyler home, Lucas paused at the threshold of her car. "Maybe you could stay. I have a place. The sofa can be folded out." Rachel laughed softly. "Would you like to invite me to spend the night?" Lucas smiled, scratching the back of his head. "Within the bounds of decency. Or was I too hasty?" "Thank you, but we have to go," she answered softly. "Tyler is getting ready for school tomorrow, and I have to go to work." Lucas nodded. "Certainly." He closed the door and Rachel rolled down the window. A tense moment hung between them. They wanted to do something more than just wave goodbye. Lucas leaned over. "See you?" Rachel suddenly leaned forward a little and kissed him lightly on the cheek. "See you." Her eyes sparkled, an embarrassed smile touched her lips, and Lucas felt the ground disappear from under his feet with happiness. He watched the car drive away, touching the place of her kiss with his fingers, and for the first time in a very long time, he felt a warm glow of hope inside. 6 months have passed. For Lucas, these months became a time of hard work on himself, on relationships, on a new meaning in life. Every morning he woke up sober and grateful for another day. He put his military experience and experiences to use. He got a job as a physical training instructor at a rehabilitation center for veterans, similar to the one where he himself was treated. Helped other former soldiers cope with body and spirit. The work not only brought a modest income, but also gave a feeling of being needed. The relationship with the children has finally strengthened. Sophie now trusted her father, shared her teenage experiences. Either she would quarrel with a friend, or she would worry about a cute classmate. Lucas listened attentively, gave advice to the best of his ability, but most importantly, he was always there sober and loving. One evening after her school play where Sophie got the main role, she threw herself on his neck in front of everyone with the words, "I love you, Dad," and Lucas then barely held back tears of joy. Ethan blossomed too. Dad constantly took him on weekend hikes, taught him to swim in the pool, and went to all his baseball games. The boy became more confident and cheerful. The teachers noted that he had calmed down before. Apparently, stress over his family got in the way. They established correct, calm communication with Ellie. It was awkward at first, but when she saw that Lucas stood firmly on his feet and didn't hold a grudge, she also softened. Their meetings took place mainly during the transfer of children or at school events. Mark, Ellie's new partner, kept a discreet distance, not interfering with Lucas's fatherly role. As for Rachel, their friendship and budding love became the best gift of fate for Lucas. They took their time, enjoying every stage. Rachel got a permanent job as a nurse at a Colorado Springs clinic. This was not without the help of Lucas, who put in a good word with a doctor he knew. She moved closer, renting an apartment next door to Lucas. Now they see each other almost every day. Tyler and Ethan went to the same school and became inseparable, and Sophie became something of an older sister to Tyler, looking after him when Rachel was late on shift. Finally, Lucas fulfilled his long-standing duty on the anniversary of Josh's death. Finally, Lucas fulfilled his long-standing duty. On the anniversary of Josh's death, he and Rachel went to Kansas to visit his brother's grave. Standing next to a simple headstone in a rural cemetery, Lucas felt at peace for the first time in 10 years. He quietly asked his friend for forgiveness and promised to take care of Rachel and Tyler. Rachel, squeezing his hand, whispered through her tears that Josh had forgiven him a long time ago and was proud of him. Returning home, Lucas felt that the heavy burden of guilt had finally left his soul. One evening, after returning from work, Rachel picked up Lucas from the center in her car, and they lingered at the entrance, watching the sunset. The children were with Ellie, and for the first time in a long time, they had a quiet evening together. Rachel leaned against him and said with a smile, "You know, sometimes it seems to me as if it has always been like this quiet life. We work, we return home together." Lucas put his arm around her waist. "It's like a family." She met his gaze. "Isn't that so?" Lucas felt warm from her words. He took her by both hands. "I wanted to ask for a long time. What do you think about us?" Rachel narrowed her eyes slyly. "What do you think?" He laughed quietly. I think I'm happy with you. And something tells me Josh is probably laughing up there right now, watching us here. Are we both stubborn to call a spade a spade? She finished and laughed to herself. Lucas took a deep breath, no longer hiding. Rachel, I love you. My heart beat in anticipation. Rachel opened her eyes wide, but almost immediately smiled through the tears that had welled up. I love you too, Lucas. He carefully pulled her towards him. Their lips met in the first truly tender and conscious kiss. At that moment, Lucas realized pain, guilt, and past losses were not in vain. Everything led him to this moment when he stands on the threshold of a new life, full of love and hope. A few months later, early on a clear April morning, Lucas woke up in his bed. Not alone, Rachel was sleeping peacefully next to him, barely smiling in her sleep. The rays of the sun slid through her hair. Lucas carefully got out so as not to wake her and walked into the kitchen. Today was a special day. It's been exactly a year since he's been drinking. There were numerous children's drawings and to-do lists hanging on the refrigerator. Standing out among the magnets was a round coin, a one-year sobriety token that he had been given at yesterday's meeting. He touched it with his fingertips, feeling proud and humble. A memory surfaced of how yesterday, accepting this token, he told the group, "A year ago, I lay on the threshold of my house, thinking that life was over. And now here I am, sober, surrounded by the people I love. If I succeed, then everyone has hope." These words were not easy for him, but the audience greeted them with applause. Lucas himself believed in them with every fiber of his being. There was a quiet knock on the door the day before Sophie and Ethan had agreed to come in the morning with a surprise. Lucas opened it, putting a finger to his lips. The children entered, giggling in whispers. Sophie was holding a homemade cake with one candle. "Congratulations," she whispered joyfully, hugging her father. "Happy 1 year, Dad. This is great," Ethan added, also going in for a hug. Lucas felt such a surge of happiness that it seemed his heart would overflow. He sat the children down at the table and made cocoa for everyone. Soon Rachel woke up and appeared in the kitchen wearing Lucas's shirt, causing Sophie to smile slyly. Tyler also jumped up when he heard the voices and rushed from the next apartment with a drawing of "Congratulations, Lucas" in hand. At a noisy breakfast, the 5 of them ate a cake clumsily decorated with cream, apparently. The children tried themselves and laughed. At one point, Lucas leaned back in his chair and took in the animated scene. The kids arguing over who would get the last word from "Happy First, Dad." On the cake, Rachel deftly wipes the cream off Tyler's nose. Sophie pours juice for everyone. A house filled with laughter. Favorite people nearby. Lucas quietly walked out onto the porch to take a moment to catch his breath. The morning sun hit his eyes almost the same as on that terrible morning a year ago, when he woke up on the grass near the house. But how things have changed. Birds chirped around, and the scent of spring flowers filled the air. He raised his face to the sky, feeling the warmth of the rays, and closed his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. It was unclear to anyone, either God or fate or friends who were no longer with him. "I live." The door creaked behind him and Rachel came out. "Hey, where did you run off to?" Lucas turned to her with a bright smile. "Nowhere. I'm here. With all of you now forever." He extended his hand to her. Rachel put her hand in and they stood together in the morning sun, welcoming a new day, a day full of hope. The past is left behind. The pain has receded. Lucas Jennings had a life ahead of him, a real, difficult, wonderful life that he had rediscovered and was never going to lose. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one.